Sometimes we find ourselves at the crossroads of life. Every direction seems clouded with uncertainty. At times, we may even feel like giving up. All of us, at one point or another, face challenging periods where the road ahead is unclear. Hope seems to be a distant flicker on the horizon. But even in these difficult moments, let us not lose sight of the enduring promise that God is with us. He continually urges us not to give up, but to persevere with courage and faith. Today, I will explore the encouraging and comforting principles that God offers us for moments like these. When we find ourselves at the crossroads of life or on the brink of despair, it is with a heart full of hope and a spirit eager for your breakthroughs that I bring you today's message. I am also going to pray a powerful prayer with you in the mighty name of Jesus. So watch until the end and open your hearts to receive the blessings of this prayer. My dear friends, the Bible is a wellspring of wisdom and encouragement, especially for times when we find ourselves in a maze of uncertainty and trials. In Joshua 1-9, we are reminded, "Have I not commanded you? Be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid, nor be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." These are not just words to skim over or treat lightly. They are a powerful promise from God Himself. Think about it. This verse is essentially God's directive for life. He is telling us that regardless of where we are or what situation we find ourselves in, we are never alone. God is with us. In our moments of indecision, in the corridors of doubt, and even on the cliffs of despair, God is right there beside us, offering strength and courage. But how can we embrace this profound assurance in the practical, everyday challenges we face? How can we manifest this courage and strength when our souls are weary, our spirits low, and our vision clouded? Let us look at 8 essential truths that will not only remind you that God is with you, but also guide you on how to live in the abundance of that truth. You must never forget these truths, but rather, you should embrace them, especially when the going gets tough. Number 1, your journey is unique. Embrace it. The scriptures tell us in Psalm 139:16, "Your eyes saw my substance, being yet unformed, and in your book they all were written, the days fashioned for me, when as yet there were none of them." This profound statement from King David opens up the first point. Our individual journeys are unique and should be embraced as such. You may have heard the story of Joseph. He was sold into slavery by his own brothers and yet rose to become second in command in Egypt. Imagine if he had resisted his journey. He would have never fulfilled his divine role during the famine. You too may face pits and prisons in your life journey, but remember, they are part of God's grand plan for you. Many people today engage in comparison, looking at someone else's journey and asking, "Why isn't my life like that?" Friends, comparing your journey to others will only rob you of the joy and lessons that come from your own unique path. Had Joseph compared himself to his brothers, he would have missed out on a destiny that saved nations. It's easy to look at your life and feel as though you've been given a raw deal. You might have less, hurt more, or struggle longer. But remember this, God's book contains the days fashioned for you, not for someone else, but for you. Your journey holds a vital place in the magnificent design of God's divine plan. Let us embrace the unknown pathways, the sharp turns, and even the steep hills because God has ordained each step. When you understand this, you will realize that there is a comforting predictability in what appears to be unpredictable in life. God is always in control. Number 2, let go and let God. Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. These are the words of Jesus in Matthew 11:28. My friends, these words are an open invitation for us to surrender our worries and struggles to Jesus Christ. In the story of King Saul, we see a man who tried to carry his troubles alone. Jealousy and hatred consumed him to the point where he lost his kingship, his peace, and eventually his life. He serves as a warning about what happens when we don't let go and let God. We often think of surrender as a sign of weakness. In a society that values self-reliance and individualism, admitting that you can't do something on your own is often looked down upon. But friends, there is tremendous strength in surrendering to God. It takes immense courage to recognize that we are not all-powerful and that we need divine intervention to navigate through life's complexities. In surrender, you make room for God to work miracles in your life. Saul never got to witness what could have happened if he'd surrendered his need for control to God. But David, who was the opposite of Saul in many ways, surrendered his concerns to God continually. In doing so, he went from being a shepherd boy to becoming one of Israel's greatest kings. When we surrender to God, we make a powerful statement. We say, "Lord, I trust you more than I trust myself. I believe you have a better plan for me than I could ever devise." In surrender, we exchange our limited capacity for God's unlimited possibilities. We exchange our finite understanding for His infinite wisdom. So how do you let go and let God? It starts with a simple yet heartfelt prayer saying, "God, I surrender all to you." From that point, it's about taking your hands off the steering wheel of control and allowing God to guide your life. Trust Him, friends, for His yoke is easy and His burden is light. Number 3, the importance of resilience. In Proverbs 24:16, the Bible tells us, "For a righteous man may fall 7 times and rise again, but the wicked shall fall by calamity." Friends, life is not about how many times you fall, but how many times you rise after the fall. Let's look again at the character of Job. Here was a man who had everything: wealth, family, and health. In an instant he lost it all. Yet in the face of immense suffering and incomprehensible loss, Job never wavered in his faith. Resilience is not an innate quality that some people have and others don't. It's a conscious choice to keep going despite the odds. You may not have control over your circumstances, but you do have control over how you respond to them. When life hands you lemons, resilience says, "I'll make lemonade." But let's be honest, resilience is easier said than done. When you're in the middle of a storm, it's tough to see how you could possibly weather it. Job had his moments of doubt and despair, but what kept him going was his faith in God. He understood something crucial, that God was still in control, even when everything seemed to be falling apart. Job's story teaches us another crucial aspect of resilience, the importance of staying rooted in faith. Even when he lost everything, Job made a powerful declaration, "Though he slay me, yet will I trust him." He understood that his circumstances did not determine God's character. God was still good even if life was not. Resilience is not a lone endeavor. It's okay to seek help, to lean on friends and family, and above all, to lean on God. When you waver, when you stumble, when you fall flat on your face, remember that the ground is the best place to start a new upward journey. Like Job, you will find that God rewards resilience in ways you cannot even begin to imagine. Number 4, humility is your friend. In Proverbs 22:4, we are told that by humility and the fear of the Lord are riches and honor and life. There is a compelling story in the Bible about King Nebuchadnezzar, who was humbled by God for his arrogance. The king had built an enormous empire and attributed all his achievements to his own skill and ability. God humbled him by allowing him to lose his sanity, and he lived like a beast until he recognized God's sovereignty. Nebuchadnezzar's story serves as a potent reminder of the role humility plays in our lives. Often we tend to think that our abilities and our accomplishments are the result of our own efforts. But this mindset can lead us down a slippery slope where we forget that every good thing we have comes from God. My friends, there's a delicate but crucial difference between self-confidence and arrogance. It's vital to acknowledge your abilities and to use them to the fullest. However, it's just as essential to remember that these abilities are gifts from God. When you place yourself on a pedestal, you restrict God's ability to work through you. Humility, on the other hand, leaves room for God to move. Nebuchadnezzar learned humility the hard way. He had to lose everything, his sanity, his kingdom, his pride, before he could acknowledge God's sovereignty. But you don't have to take that path. Instead, cultivate humility in your daily life. Before you make decisions, seek God's guidance. Before you celebrate your victories, give God the glory. And before you question your worth, remember that you are God's masterpiece. Being humble doesn't mean being a doormat. It means understanding your place in the grand scheme of things. You are a beloved child of God, gifted with unique abilities and placed in specific situations, not for your glory, but for His. The irony of humility is that by making ourselves less, we become more. We become more open to opportunities, more receptive to blessings, and more attuned to the divine whispers that guide our steps. Number 5, lean not on your own understanding. Number 5, lean not on your own understanding. Proverbs 3:5-6 admonishes us, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct your paths." This is a critical message for us, especially in times when the world seems so complex and overwhelming. Remember King Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived? Even he, with all his wisdom, often turned to God for guidance. It was God-given wisdom that led Solomon to propose cutting the baby in half to identify its real mother. showing how wisdom from God surpasses human logic. But it was also Solomon's reliance on his own understanding that eventually led him astray, turning to other gods and moving away from the one true God. Friends, our own understanding is often flawed and incomplete. We only catch a glimpse of the magnificent plan that God is orchestrating. Our perception is limited to our experiences, our knowledge, and sadly our biases. However, God sees the complete picture. He knows the end from the beginning and every moment in between. When we lean on our understanding, we are navigating life with a defective compass. Our logic can be faulty, and our emotions can deceive us. In contrast, God's wisdom is perfect and unchanging. Trusting in the Lord means letting go of our pride and admitting our limitations. It requires a childlike faith, one that says, "God, I don't know why this is happening, but I trust you to lead me through it." The second part of this verse tells us to acknowledge God in all our ways. This means that we don't reserve God for Sundays or for moments of crisis. He is to be involved in our daily decisions, from the routine to the significant. When we acknowledge God in everything we do, He promises to direct our paths. And who wouldn't want the Creator of the universe as their personal guide? Number 6. Accept that some questions have no answers. Friends, have you ever considered the story of the man born blind, as narrated in John 9? When the disciples saw him, they immediately questioned why he was born that way. Was it because of his sin or his parents' sins? Jesus' response was enlightening. He said, "Neither this man nor his parents sinned, but that the works of God should be revealed in him." We live in a world that seeks answers for everything. We are used to Googling any question and getting an immediate response. But there are questions in life that do not have easy answers. And sometimes the search for those answers can drive us away from God rather than toward Him. The man born blind did not understand why he had to spend his life in darkness. But when Jesus healed him, the purpose became clear, to reveal the works of God. Sometimes the why isn't as important as the what now. What are you going to do in the situation you're in? How will you allow God to reveal His works through you? Accepting that some questions have no answers can be liberating. It relieves you of the exhausting quest for explanations and allows you to focus on the journey itself. When you stop asking why something happened and start asking what you can do now that it has happened, you shift your perspective from one of despair to one of hope. Consider this. The absence of an answer is not the absence of God. He is with you, even in the questions and the doubts. The man born blind had no answers, but he had an encounter with Jesus that changed his life forever. Sometimes that is all we need. An encounter that reminds us that God is still in control, even when our questions go unanswered. Number 7. Keep the faith. The Apostle Paul writes in 2 Timothy 4:7, "I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith." There is something incredibly compelling about these words. They are the words of a man who had been through shipwrecks, beatings, imprisonments, and countless other perils, yet his faith remained unshaken. Friends, faith is the cornerstone of our spiritual journey. It is what connects us to God and empowers us to face the challenges that come our way. Without faith, it is easy to crumble under the weight of our trials and tribulations. With faith, we find the strength to press on, even when the going gets tough. But what does it mean to keep the faith? Is it just about holding on to a set of beliefs? No, it is much more than that. Faith is not merely believing in God, it is about believing God. It is taking Him at His word and acting upon it, even when everything around you suggests otherwise. Consider the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These 3 young men were faced with a terrible choice: bow down to King Nebuchadnezzar's golden statue, or be thrown into a fiery furnace. They chose to keep the faith, declaring that even if God did not save them, they would not bow to another god. They knew the risks, yet their faith remained unshakable. Keeping the faith is a lifelong endeavor. It is a commitment to stand firm in your beliefs, regardless of the challenges that come your way. It is a commitment to follow God, even when the path is littered with obstacles. And it is a commitment to hold on to hope, even when despair seems like the easier option. As you go through life, you will encounter moments that test your faith. In those moments, remember Paul's words. Remember Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Remember that you are not alone. God is with you, empowering you to fight the good fight, to finish the race, and above all, to keep the faith. Number 8. Find joy in the journey. My friends, the Apostle Paul tells us in Philippians 4:4, "Rejoice in the Lord always. Again I will say, rejoice." Paul did not say to rejoice only when things are going well, or when you have received a blessing, or when you have achieved a significant milestone. He said to rejoice always. Let us consider the life of Ruth. Here was a woman who had lost her husband and decided to follow her mother-in-law, Naomi, back to a land foreign to her. She could have wallowed in her grief, but instead, she found joy in her journey, even as she gleaned leftovers in the field for survival. That joy and determination led her to Boaz, and she became part of the lineage of Jesus Christ. Joy, my friends, can turn ordinary tasks into meaningful experiences. Finding joy in the journey does not mean that you ignore the difficulties or challenges you face. It means that you recognize the good that is still present. Paul himself faced numerous hardships, and yet he found a reason to rejoice. He found joy in spreading the gospel, in strengthening the early churches, and even in the bonds he formed while imprisoned. Joy is not dependent on external circumstances. It is an inner state of being. It is a decision to be happy, not because everything is good, but because you can see the good in everything. Joy is the melody that plays in your heart, the sunshine that brightens even the cloudiest day, and the peace that calms the raging storm within you. Joy in the journey makes the hardships more bearable and the milestones more meaningful. It is the glue that holds you together when you are falling apart, and the fuel that keeps you going when you are running on empty. Above all, joy is a gift from God, available to all but received by those who choose to open their hearts to it. Conclusion. I want you to remember these 8 points. Your journey is unique, so embrace it. Let go and let God. Resilience is important. Humility is your friend. Do not lean on your own understanding. Accept that some questions have no answers. Keep the faith. And finally, find joy in the journey. Every step you take is a part of God's grand plan for your life. It may not always be smooth or straightforward, but it is your journey, ordained and directed by our Heavenly Father. Take courage, my friends, and remember that God is with you every step of the way.